What if the biggest cover-up in daytime television history wasn't orchestrated by corporate networks, but by a carefully hidden cartel of Hollywood's most powerful elite? Why did a globally celebrated queen of kindness spend 2 decades building a media empire while secretly running a calculated, behind-the-scenes intimidation campaign to neutralize her competitors? The mainstream media is in an absolute state of pure panic right now because a massive industry takedown is unfolding live before our eyes, and the fallout is completely real. ABC News, TMZ, and the Law and Crime Network have just confirmed a series of breaking developments that link the sudden downfall of daytime television staples to a coordinated campaign of silencing, blacklisting, and institutional manipulation. What started as whispers in the dark has now exploded into a full-blown war as newly unsealed industry files and explosive network leaks blow the lid off the entertainment industry's darkest secrets. Legendary comedian Gervais has just stepped forward to expose exactly how Wendy Williams was systematically targeted, legally trapped, and forced out of the spotlight just as she was preparing to reveal the ultimate truth. Are you ready to see the real reason why the curtains were permanently drawn on daytime's most controversial figures? Grab your popcorn and pay close attention, because the wall of silence has officially collapsed, and Hollywood's favorite puppet masters have nowhere left to hide. The Hollywood elite are absolutely scrambling right now because the corporate matrix they spent decades building is officially fracturing right before our eyes. You have to wonder how a town built on glitz, glamour, and toxic perfection managed to keep its darkest secrets locked away for so long without anyone blowing the whistle. The truth is they did not keep them locked away because the whistle was being blown every single day by independent voices who refused to bow down to the studio executives and network puppet masters. We are talking about a highly coordinated, deep-state entertainment system that operates completely outside the law to protect its most valuable assets while destroying anyone who dares to speak out. For nearly 2 decades, daytime television was treated as a safe haven of toxic positivity where audiences were told to be kind to one another, while the actual hosts were running corporate operations that resembled high-level intimidation syndicates. It was an elaborate defense mechanism designed to project an image of wholesome entertainment to the masses, while hiding a multi-million-dollar corporate network that specialized in silencing opposition. The mainstream media wants you to believe that show cancellations and sudden medical retirements are just a normal part of the Hollywood news cycle. But investigative journalists are pulling back the curtain on a terrifying reality. This is not just a toxic workplace environment we are looking at. It is a full-blown institutional cover-up that links the highest levels of music production, daytime talk shows, and international talent agencies. When you start connecting the dots between the sudden, mysterious disappearance of Wendy Williams and the frantic international relocation of other major daytime hosts, the entire narrative completely falls apart. The panic inside the boardroom reached an absolute boiling point when legendary comedian Gervais decided he was completely done playing by the industry rules. Gervais spent years operating on the periphery of the Hollywood elite, watching their behavior, documenting their hypocrisy, and waiting for the absolute perfect moment to strike a fatal blow to their public relations machine. When he walked out onto that stage to host the Golden Globes, the executives in the front row thought they were getting a standard safe Hollywood roast, but instead they got a front row seat to their own public execution. Gervais did not just tell jokes that night. He delivered a calculated, targeted investigative brief dressed up as comedy that stunned the entire room into absolute silence. He explicitly looked at some of the most powerful producers, directors, and multimillionaires in the world and told them to their faces that he knew exactly how they were connected to international human trafficking networks. This was years before the official Department of Justice investigations would drop, which begs the ultimate question of how an independent British comedian knew the exact details of these operations, while the mainstream news networks remained completely silent. The silence in that ballroom was deafening because every single person sitting in those luxury seats knew that Gervais was not exaggerating for viral clicks. Look closely at the archival footage of that night, and you will see the absolute terror written across the faces of people who are used to buying their way out of any situation. They were not laughing because they realized that the corporate protection armor they had relied on for decades had just been permanently pierced on live international television. BBC News insiders have now leaked highly classified network communications revealing that the immediate aftermath of that broadcast was pure corporate chaos. Major studio heads and network executives immediately held emergency meetings to demand that Gervais be completely blacklisted from ever performing or hosting an industry event again. They were desperately trying to contain the damage before the public started looking into the flight logs and corporate registries that Gervais had just hinted at. But the elite underestimated the digital age because you cannot unring a bell once the entire world has heard it loud and clear. The unsealed investigative logs that have recently been made public prove that every single accusation Gervais made on that stage was completely rooted in verifiable fact. Major Hollywood studios and premier talent agencies were actively operating as hunting grounds, utilizing private auditions and exclusive industry parties to target young talent and force them into compromising situations. The corporate panic intensified tenfold this week when the Law and Crime Network officially verified that Hollywood heavyweight Casey Wasserman was forced to abruptly sell off his entire namesake talent firm. This sudden, unprecedented liquidation happened immediately after explosive, highly suggestive email exchanges between Wasserman and Ghislaine Maxwell were officially unsealed by federal investigators. The messages revealed a level of cozy familiarity and inappropriate behavior that completely shattered the agency's corporate standing overnight. The financial fallout from this specific leak has been an absolute bloodbath for the Hollywood corporate structure as mainstream stars realize the ship is sinking fast. Major Grammy-winning artists and global sports icons are currently racing to publicly sever their ties with the agency to protect their own brands from being dragged down in the impending legal storm. This massive, frantic sell-off is the ultimate proof that the elite are no longer protected by the traditional studio system and are desperately trying to move their money before federal indictments start dropping. While the elite are busy trying to liquidate their assets and flee the country, the tragic cost of actually standing up to this system is being highlighted by the ongoing saga of Wendy Williams. For over 2 decades, Williams occupied a completely unique space in American media, because she was absolutely fearless when it came to naming names. She did not pander to the Hollywood public relations machine, and she certainly did not care about protecting the reputations of powerful music moguls or daytime television royalty. When you look back at her legacy, Williams was one of the first mainstream media personalities to openly report on the systematic abuse of underage stars within the hip-hop and pop music industries. She used her platform to warn the public about how powerful executives were using their massive wealth and corporate backing to manipulate young, vulnerable artists who had no legal protection. While the rest of the media treated these executives like untouchable cultural icons, Williams was actively calling them out as predators who belonged behind bars. The industry's response to her reporting was swift, brutal, and entirely calculated to ensure her complete and total destruction. Investigative journalists have now obtained leaked legal and medical documentation revealing that her sudden, highly restrictive court-ordered guardianship was not a medical necessity at all. It was an elaborate state-sanctioned corporate silencing tactic designed to strip away her legal rights, isolate her from her family, and prevent her from speaking out. The narrative that Williams was suffering from irreversible progressive dementia has been completely blown apart by newly ordered independent medical evaluations. These secret medical reports show that the original diagnosis was heavily manipulated by court-appointed handlers who needed a legal excuse to keep her locked away in a facility. The independent specialist found that while she faced health battles, her cognitive resilience was entirely intact, meaning she was legally competent all along. This means that a major media figure was essentially subjected to a digital execution and physical kidnapping under the guise of legal protection, just to keep her from testifying in upcoming industry trials. Audio leaks from inside her current facility reveal a heartbreaking situation where Williams is actively pleading to be released, stating clearly that she is being held against her will. Her handlers have completely blocked her family from visiting her, and have taken total control over every single penny of her multi-million-dollar estate. This terrifying pattern of corporate intimidation becomes glaringly obvious when you look at the historical footage of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs appearing on her show. The moment Williams began investigating his business practices and the dark secrets of his inner circle, she was abruptly fired from major radio networks without any logical explanation. When he later appeared on her daytime talk show, he pointedly mentioned that he had met her teenage son backstage, a comment that caused Williams' face to completely lose all color. Commentators and investigative reporters are now analyzing that exact moment as a chilling live-on-air demonstration of how the industry cartel operates. It was a thinly veiled threat disguised as a friendly backstage interaction, designed to remind an independent journalist that her family was entirely within their reach if she did not back off. Williams knew exactly what that message meant, and it highlights the unbelievable amount of pressure she was under while trying to deliver the truth to her audience. The matrix of protection is completely shattering now because the public is finally starting to see how all of these seemingly separate celebrity scandals are deeply interconnected. The exact same individuals who were running toxic daytime television sets were collaborating with the music executives and talent agents who are now being exposed in federal court files. They built a massive wall of silence over the last 20 years using NDAs, legal threats, and media blackouts, but that wall has officially turned to dust. The brave whistleblowers who risked their entire lives, their fortunes, and their mental sanity to speak out against this corrupt system are finally being completely vindicated. The official federal files, the unsealed emails, and the sudden corporate collapses are matching their exact words from years ago, proving that they were telling the absolute truth all along. The public is tuning out the heavily scripted corporate media narratives and demanding total accountability as this historic investigative takedown continues to unfold across the world. The panic behind the scenes is reaching a historic fever pitch because these Hollywood power players know that their time is completely running out. You have to understand that these networks did not just create daytime talk shows for entertainment value. They created them as massive social engineering experiments designed to keep the public completely distracted while the real crimes were happening behind the curtain. When you look at how Ellen DeGeneres built her brand on a highly manufactured version of kindness, it makes you realize how calculated the entire entertainment industry really is. For nearly 20 years, the public was told that anyone who questioned the behavior of daytime royalty was just a bitter hater or a conspiracy theorist looking for clout. But the unsealed legal documentation obtained by independent news networks paints a completely different picture of what was actually happening when the cameras stopped rolling. The corporate structure surrounding daytime television was heavily fortified by high-priced crisis management teams and elite entertainment lawyers who were paid millions of dollars to keep any negative reporting completely buried. This brings us to the core of the massive bombshell that Gervais has dropped into the lap of the mainstream media executives this week. Gervais has allegedly handed over a file of internal industry communications that outlines the exact strategy used to completely dismantle Wendy Williams' career and life. According to these leaked reports, Williams was tracking a highly sensitive story involving elite daytime hosts who were using their corporate charity foundations to launder money for high-level Hollywood trafficking networks. The mainstream media wants you to believe that Williams simply got sick and lost her mind, but the timing of her sudden legal conservatorship is far too convenient to be an accident. Williams was explicitly warned by top-tier studio executives to stop talking about the secret parties, the private island flight logs, and the deep-seated corruption that connects music moguls to daytime television producers. When she refused to sit down and shut up, the machine mobilized against her with a level of clinical precision that should absolutely terrify anyone who believes in a free press. We are looking at a system where a major television star can be completely stripped of her human rights, her finances, and her voice overnight without a single mainstream news network questioning the legal validity of the process. ABC News and TMZ have been tiptoeing around the real story for months because their own parent corporations are deeply embedded in the exact same power structures that are being exposed. They would rather feed the public a steady diet of safe, generic celebrity gossip than report on the literal human rights violation happening to one of the most iconic figures in talk show history. But the truth is leaking out through the cracks of the internet because the public is no longer relying on corporate television to get their news. The unsealed medical evaluations that have recently been brought to light prove that Williams was subjected to a highly sophisticated medical gaslighting campaign. Court-appointed doctors who were on the payroll of the legal guardianship system deliberately misdiagnosed her with a progressive, irreversible cognitive decline to ensure that no judge would ever take her testimony seriously in a court of law. This was the ultimate legal hit job because once a person is stamped with that specific diagnosis, their ability to sue, defend themselves, or expose corporate corruption is completely neutralized under the law. It allowed her handlers to take total control of her multi-million-dollar estate, freeze her bank accounts, and completely cut off her access to independent legal counsel. This is exactly how the Hollywood elite handle whistleblowers who know too much. They do not just fire them. They use the legal system to completely erase their existence from public life. The terrifying reality of this situation becomes even more intense when you look at the massive wave of high-profile individuals who are suddenly abandoning their luxury properties and fleeing the country. Over the last few months, we have witnessed an unprecedented exodus of Hollywood royalty, moving their assets to international tax havens and relocating to remote estates in Europe. The corporate media is trying to spin these sudden moves as simple lifestyle changes or political statements, but industry insiders know that these people are running away from impending federal subpoenas. They know that the unsealing of the Casey Wasserman files was just the opening act of a massive federal sweep that is set to take down some of the biggest names in the entertainment business. When Wasserman was forced to sell his talent agency after his flirtatious messages with Ghislaine Maxwell were exposed, it sent a clear message to the rest of Hollywood that nobody is safe anymore. The protective shield that the studio system once provided has completely vanished, and the elite are now in a state of pure survival mode, looking for any escape route they can find. The connection between the Wasserman downfall and the silencing of Wendy Williams is much closer than the mainstream media wants you to realize. Wasserman's agency represented thousands of top-tier celebrities, athletes, and performers. She was ready to name names, expose the specific executives who were facilitating these crimes, and show the world how deep the rabbit hole actually goes. But before she could deliver that final, fatal blow to the corporate matrix, she was abruptly yanked off the air and placed under the complete control of court-appointed strangers. This is why Ricky Gervais has been so vocal about the hypocrisy of the entertainment industry, because he saw firsthand how the town rewards predators while destroying the people who try to protect the innocent. Gervais has repeatedly stated that the Hollywood elite are some of the most privileged, protected, and corrupt individuals on the face of the earth, and his Golden Globe speeches were a direct warning to the public. He knew that the mainstream media was never going to report the truth about these people, so he used his live, unedited platform to bypass the corporate censors and speak directly to the world. The room fell completely silent because the people sitting in those front row seats realized that their secret lives were being exposed to millions of viewers at home. The industry tried to play it off as edgy comedy, but the frantic damage control that happened behind the scenes tells a completely different story. Network executives immediately scrambled to ensure that Gervais would never be given a live microphone at an industry event again, proving that they are absolutely terrified of independent voices who cannot be bought. They can control the narrative on their own networks, but they cannot control a legendary comedian who has enough wealth and independence to tell the absolute truth without caring about the consequences. The public is finally starting to see through the grand illusion of Hollywood, because the contradictions are becoming impossible to ignore. You cannot preach about kindness, empathy, and social justice on daytime television, while actively participating in a system that locks up whistleblowers and protects high-level predators. The wall of silence that kept these secrets safe for generations has been permanently breached, and the information that is pouring out is absolutely devastating to the corporate establishment. We are watching the total collapse of a multi-billion-dollar public relations machine that has spent decades manipulating public perception for its own gain. The legal momentum has shifted completely, and the federal investigations are moving closer to the center of power every single day. The brave individuals who stood up and risked everything to expose this corruption are finally being recognized as the heroes they truly are, while the puppet masters are left scrambling in the dark. This investigative takedown is far from over, and the upcoming legal battles are going to expose even more shocking details about how Hollywood really operates behind closed doors. The corporate media can try to ignore it, the networks can try to block it, but the truth is already out there, and the public is demanding absolute accountability. Keep your eyes wide open and pay attention to the details, because the real exposure of Hollywood's darkest cartel is just getting started. The corporate panic has officially reached a point of absolute no return, because the secret networks that controlled Hollywood for decades are dissolving under the weight of federal scrutiny. You have to realize that the entertainment industry did not just lose its power overnight, it lost its ability to lie to the public with total authority. Every time a major network executive attempts to spin these sudden asset sales or hasty international relocations as routine business, independent journalists uncover another layer of verifiable corruption. The strategy of using highly restrictive legal guardianships and corporate non-disclosure agreements to lock away whistleblowers is no longer working because the digital footprint left by these elite cartels is permanent. The unsealed investigative records being scrutinized by legal networks show that the financial infrastructure of daytime television was deeply intertwined with the very talent agencies now facing total collapse. When you look at the paper trail left by corporate executives who manage these media empires, you find a highly organized pattern of suppressing independent news reporters. This is exactly why the latest disclosures from industry whistleblowers have sent shockwaves through the corporate boardrooms of every major media conglomerate. According to highly classified legal filings leaked from ongoing federal probes, a group of independent creators is currently compiling a definitive database of the internal emails used to organize the blacklisting of major stars. This database allegedly proves that whenever a television host or radio personality attempted to report on the systemic exploitation of young talent, a centralized public relations network was activated to destroy their career. Wendy Williams was trapped in the crosshairs of this exact network because she possessed the specific financial documentation required to prove that corporate funds were being funneled into private security firms tasked with tracking independent whistleblowers. The mainstream media continues to push the narrative that her removal from public life was purely a consequence of personal health complications, but the timing remains an undeniable red flag. Williams was silenced precisely when her broadcast ratings were high enough to give her total independence from the traditional studio system. The legal mechanisms used to control her estate and freeze her personal assets are now being thoroughly investigated by independent legal watchdogs who recognize this case as a dangerous precedent for civil liberties. If a globally recognized media titan can be completely stripped of her constitutional rights and isolated from her family behind closed doors, then no independent journalist is truly safe from corporate retaliation. The corporate media handles this reality by maintaining a total blackout on the actual court proceedings, while continuing to broadcast trivial celebrity distractions to keep the public asleep. But the public is waking up to the reality that the entire celebrity ecosystem is an engineered illusion designed to protect a highly corrupt network of institutional power. The independent medical reports that completely discredited the original cognitive decline diagnosis have forced a massive re-evaluation of how the legal system is weaponized against wealthy whistleblowers. Legal specialists are now pointing out that the fabricated medical narratives were intentionally leaked to mainstream tabloids to permanently damage her credibility before she could ever step inside a federal courtroom. This level of calculated character assassination is standard operating procedure for an industry that values profit and secrecy above human life and journalistic integrity. Once the elite realize that an individual cannot be bribed with a syndication contract or a multi-million-dollar network development deal, they immediately transition to a strategy of absolute destruction. They use their connections within the legal system to construct a cage made of court orders, asset freezes, and forced isolation, ensuring that the whistleblower is completely neutralized. The direct result of these corrupt operations coming to light is the massive, unprecedented panic currently sweeping through the upper echelons of the entertainment world. We are watching household names completely abandon their multi-million-dollar production companies, dissolve their charitable foundations, and establish permanent residences in foreign countries with zero intention of ever returning to the United States. These individuals understand that the traditional corporate protections that shielded them from criminal liability for 20 years have completely shattered. The downfall of premier talent agencies like the one managed by Casey Wasserman has demonstrated that corporate status means absolutely nothing once federal investigators unseal direct communications with known international traffickers. The panic is compounding daily because the elite realize that one high-profile indictment inevitably leads to a dozen more as corporate executives scramble to sign plea deals to save themselves. The wall of protection has vanished entirely, leaving these previously untouchable figures completely exposed to the full force of the law. The connection between these crumbling talent agencies and the structured silencing of independent daytime talk show hosts is becoming more obvious with every single unsealed document. These agencies did not just manage careers, they managed information, utilizing their immense corporate leverage to threaten networks with total talent strikes if specific investigative stories were allowed to air. Williams was actively working to expose this hidden monopoly, showing how a small group of agents and executives held absolute control over what the public was allowed to see and hear. She understood that the true power of Hollywood did not reside with the actors on screen, but with the hidden brokers who controlled the distribution networks, the financing, and the non-disclosure agreements. By threatening to bring these hidden power brokers into the light, she signed the death warrant for her own television career and opened the door for the legal trap that ultimately enclosed her. This is the exact dark reality that independent commentators have been warning the public about for years, and the evidence is finally undeniable. The elite media apparatus can no longer protect its favorite puppet masters because the alternative news landscape has completely broken the monopoly on information distribution. You cannot maintain a massive cultural illusion when millions of viewers are actively cross-referencing court documents, flight logs, and corporate registries in real time. The contradictions of the Hollywood system have become far too massive to be hidden by clever public relations campaigns or manufactured mainstream media distractions. We are witnessing the absolute terminal phase of a corrupt entertainment empire that built its wealth on the exploitation of talent and the systematic destruction of honest journalists. The legal momentum against these corporate cartels is accelerating at an uncontrollable rate, and the upcoming public trials are set to expose the exact names of the executives who signed off on these silencing campaigns. The brave voices who refused to compromise their integrity are finally seeing the corporate matrix crumble around them, proving that the truth cannot be permanently locked away. The exposure of this deep-seated institutional corruption is moving directly toward the highest levels of media ownership, and no amount of corporate restructuring will be able to stop the impending collapse. The public is completely finished accepting the sanitized, heavily scripted lies of the network television broadcasts, and is demanding absolute transparency and legal accountability. Keep your focus sharp and continue analyzing the unsealed documentation, because the final takedown of Hollywood's most powerful corporate cartel is completely real and unfolding right now. The curtain has been pulled back completely, and the corporate matrix controlling Hollywood is permanently fractured. The days of the media elite hiding behind a wall of silence, non-disclosure agreements, and fabricated legal narratives are officially over. You have seen the unsealed files, you have heard the leaked audio, and you know the exact tactics used to silence independent voices who dared to tell the truth. Now the power to demand absolute accountability rests entirely in your hands. What do you think about Ricky Gervais stepping forward to expose this massive corporate takedown? Do you believe Wendy Williams will finally break free from this legal cage and expose the true puppet masters of daytime television? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because your voice is the only weapon left against this mainstream media blackout. Let us know exactly how you feel about this historic structural collapse of the Hollywood elite. If you want to stay ahead of the corporate censors and get the actual breaking truth before it gets scrubbed from the internet, make sure to smash that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and share this video with everyone you know. The public is tuning out the scripted network lies and demanding real answers. Thank you for watching, keep your eyes wide open, and we will see you in the very next expose.